Welcome back, Reviteers. We're going to continue talking about interior elevations today with a focus on bringing in drafting methods into it. What I wanted to do was do a quick review of how we integrated BIM modeling techniques into interior elevations before we get too far. If you notice on my model, I have an interior elevation already placed. I got that interior elevation by going up to the View menu, clicking on Elevation, and then making sure from this pull-down menu I clicked on Interior Elevation. I also did a little bit of editing to my interior elevation. I customized it so that I just had these single numerical markers instead of a really long name, which is the system standard. If you want to know more about that, watch the previous video. I'm just doing a quick review. And the way the interior elevation works is I dropped in some BIM models and, BIM sofas to be more specific. And what ends up happening is on each one of these interior elevation tags, if I click on it, it shows me the line of where it is essentially slicing through the room and looking at the sofa. So my camera, this pointer is showing me the way my camera's focusing. And this line right here shows me where this camera starts actually pulling things into the frame, what we're looking at. So if I double click on this 2, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to Windows Tile so you can see what's going on here. So let me back up a little bit. So first of all, it's showing me the entire length of the room. And number 2, little click happy there. If I pull, or if I drag, if I use Revit's term, if I drag, it doesn't cut through the sofa. It used to do that, but let me go back this way. If I pull it back this way, it does bring the other 2 sofas into view. So it brings me the side views of those sofas. So depending on where you drag your view, it pulls things in or out of the view. The other thing that you can do, for example, is if you didn't want to show this entire wall, if you wanted to essentially just show the living room from maybe this point of the wall on, while you have this arrow highlighted on the elevation, you'll get these drag points on these lines. So if I drag here, this also contains the box of my interior elevation. Revit does these automatically by searching for the walls or the boundaries of the room. Now, in this case, our kitchen living room is open to one another, so it's all going to be on one elevation. And it's really up to you to decide where you'd like to make that cut point, but that's how you can customize it a little bit more. So for a living room, it was really simple. We just went through and put in some BIM objects here. And what we're going to be focusing on in this lecture is the bathroom. When we start doing interior elevations, I think it's really subjective whether or not people like to do everything using BIM models or whether or not people like to do everything the drafting method. Let me once again tell you the difference between the two. When you are using the BIM method, these models appear in every view. So these sofas would appear in section views, interior elevation views, and 3D views. If we talk about a drafting method, those are just lines that specifically appear in the view that you drew them in. So for example, in my main level, if I quickly sketched a countertop using drafting lines and I went to my interior elevation, it wouldn't exist there because it's just a 2D line that exists in this view and not necessarily anywhere else. Now, sometimes to kind of help me out with the project, I kind of like to mix the 2 methods. I do a little bit of BIM and I do a little bit of drafting. And for our bathroom, I'm going to go ahead and do a mix of the 2 and show you where you can just pull in some detail using drafting methods. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and pull in my BIM models. So I'm going to start with the tub. And I'm going to go to my architecture menu, component, and I'm going to see if I have any tubs in here Nope, that was a sink. I thought I saw a tub. And if it isn't in here, I just have to pull it in. There we go. Tub rectangular 3D. And it's saying no, it can't go here because it's looking for a wall to host the plumbing. So I'm going to hit spacebar. That's not working for me yet. There we go. I'm going to flip it one more time. I'm going to go ahead and place that bath right in there. And then I'm going to go back to my pull down menu. I'm going to do the domestic 3D toilet. Again, I'm using spacebar to flip that around, and I'll fix the spacing in just a bit. Then I'm going to hit escape for now. And what I'd like to do is make sure that I have 18 inches between the toilet and the edge of the bath. So I'm going to do my distance from here to here. And I'm going to click on the toilet because that's what I want to move. 0 space 1/8 for 18 inches. And then I have my proper spacing. And now that I've got this built, let's just see what I got with those two things, with the interior elevations. So again, I'm going to go to View, Elevation, Interior Elevation. That's already there for me. And again, if the view's not where I want it, that's fine. Do you see that the arrow is pointing at the wall that isn't facing the toilet? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click to place it and then hit escape twice. And then I'm going to click on the circle. And this is where I can choose which walls I want to create an elevation of. I'm actually going to go ahead and do all of them for now. They won't be very exciting. Like this one's just going to show a door for now. This one's almost blank, minus the tub. But the one I'm really looking forward to is this one right here. So if I click on it, it takes it at about mid-span, which is fine. It's going through the threshold of the door. We'll see how that looks. But let me go ahead and get started by double clicking. And wow, I've got really tall ceilings. There's nothing like putting in a toilet and seeing how tall the ceilings are to the roof. That really shows me how tall our ceilings are. So I think this looks great. Again, this took me like 2 minutes and I already have a little elevation. What I wanted to focus on, so you guys already are familiar with this concept of creating interior elevations using BIM models. But now what I'd like to do is I want to start using drafting methods to put in a little bit more detail on our plan. So that's what I'd like to go into. Now, there are some, just so you know, when you are in Revit, you can load base cabinets. So here's a vanity cabinet. There's a double door. So I don't want you to think that I'm doing this without realizing that there is a cabinet in here. I do know that there's a cabinet and I'll go ahead and place it. And the reason why it's dashed as if it's underneath something is Revit assumes like, okay, if you're going to put this in here, this needs a counter on top of it. So this is actually under a counter. That's why it looks like this. So you can put this in, right? But what I wanted to do again is to focus on doing something a little bit more custom using drafting methods. I like that this is in here because we can quickly talk about heights. So for example, this should be 4 inches. A standard toe kick is 4 inches. Let me go ahead and do a distance to check that out. Okay, this one's 4 1/4. Did I click on the wrong spot? Yes, I did. So it's probably 4 inches. Again, I'm a little click happy today. So let's try that one more time. Okay, now it's 3 1/2. All right, Revit, don't be fancy. Let's just do a standard 4-inch toe kick, all right? And then typically in a residence, by the time we throw the countertop on, this is around, 36 inches. If we want it to be ADA accessible, some people go all the way down to about 30 inches. So you can see that this one here is coming down pretty low. So you can check the counter at your own home to see where it's at. Again, your home doesn't have to be ADA accessible unless you want it to be. But if you are designing any sort of public housing, like a condo or an apartment building, you would have to have those taller countertops so that it would be accessible to all users. And then the width of it really just depends on how wide you want it to be. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and delete these for now. Just wanted to kind of see what Revit had. I'm going to delete this as well. So again, before I delete this, just notice that in BIM, it exists in both places. But what we're about to do, drafting method, whatever I do here on the floor plan, it's not going to do anything here on the interior elevation. So I will have to do the work twice, but maybe if we are quick and efficient, it won't be too bad. Now, why would I do this? Let's say that you wanted to sketch out a semi-custom vanity that you really just can't find anywhere online, and you just wanted to sketch it out real quick. That's why you would come in and do something semi-custom. So a new command that I'm going to teach you today is something called a reference plane. It's RP, and what it is it's essentially just a sketched line. It looks like this. It will never print. And again, it's just there for you as a reference plane. And the reason why I wanted to throw this in is I have measured 18 inches from the center to the tub, and now I want to measure 18 inches to where the edge of the vanity can go. So it's always nice to at least have 36 inches here. So the 1.5 feet plus the 1.5 feet is 36 inches. So this will let me know how long my vanity can be, right? And it might be a weird number. That's fine. Let's see how weird it got. Oh, 4 feet. Not that weird. Well done. But I mean, again, all of us at home, you may have done this a little bit differently. If you have like 3'8" or 4'2" or anything close to that, you're totally fine. This part is absolutely flexible. So I can have at least a 4-foot counter. Hopefully you guys are somewhere close to that. And again, I used a reference plane, RP, and it's a click and a click. And again, it gets placed in your model, but it never prints out. It's just there for you to kind of have a placeholder that won't print out. So now that I've got this in here, what I want to do is essentially just introduce you to where some of the drafting method concepts are. And so typically I like to go to annotate, and you can see here I have detail lines, or DL. And when I click on detail line, this new menu pops up. Let me do that one more time. So I was in architecture. We can also go to model line from here, new shortcut, right? But I'm old school. They used to not have this shortcut. Don't laugh at the old lady. But I would go under annotate and detail line. I like the annotate menu because there are a couple other things that I typically use in here too. One of that is region. We'll talk about regions a little bit later, but for now we will just start with detail lines. So detail lines are just that. They're really similar to anything that you may have worked with CAD in the past. So they're just a 2D line. Or even if you've hand drafted, that's all it is. So if I click on detail line, this tells me the kind of line I'm about to draw. So is it a single segment? I can do a rectangle. I can do different types of polygons or circles or curves. There's all sorts of stuff here. Being the modernist, I'm pretty much only at line and rectangle. And you can also pick the different line types. There's not quite as many as what you might see in CAD. And again, this might not mean anything to you, like the difference between thin and wide. Let me put one of each down. So here's a thin line. It's just a click and a click. And let me go back and do a wide line. There's no difference here right now yet. Now, a few weeks ago, I told you guys a trick on how you can change your monitor settings your screen settings within Revit. Do you guys remember what that shortcut was? So it's TL, thin line, thick line. Now you can definitely see the difference between the thin line and the thick line. And looking at the line of my bathtub and my toilet, this thick line would be totally overkill. So I think the thin line would be just fine. Sorry, not thick, it's called a wide line. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. And I know I'm a little, I'm talking a lot, but it's the first time we've done this. So I wanna make sure I'm covering all of my bases. So I'm gonna go back to DL, just the shortcut DL for detail line. And I'm gonna switch this back to thin lines. And again, this is another one of those areas where if you knew CAD well, it still won't help you quite that much, right? It's just very simple clicking and dragging in this case. So we'll do an 18-inch countertop, and then I'll pull down and then click one more time and then escape to stop that. Now I can see that I've got actually a pretty good room here if I wanted to get a deeper counter. So I'm actually going to play with that number a little bit because 18 inches isn't that deep, but let's see what happens if I go to like 20 inches. Still looks okay. I don't think I can make it to 2 feet. Oh, I barely do. That's pretty close. Play around with your model. I might even be able to nudge this a little bit. It might be too close for comfort, but if you want that full 2-foot countertop, you might barely be able to get it in there. So I'll go ahead and leave it at that 2 feet, but again, you can decide if that works for you or not. So let me delete this one as well. But here is my first sketch line. And again, this is just kind of showing where the sink or the counter would go. Again, if I were to go to my interior elevation view, nothing is happening here. Detail lines only exist in the view in which you create them. So in this case, I drew them in the main level, so they will only appear in the main level, unfortunately. We're not quite done though. We have a countertop, but we don't have a sink. So I'm going to sketch that out as well. So I'll do another DL. This is another shortcut that may or may not, actually no, I'm going to hold the shortcut for now. I might just eyeball a rectangle, but maybe what I'll do, I wanted to center it. So you can see that I am not the best at drafting in Revit. I'm doing a reference plane just so I can see where the center is, okay? So by placing a center line, what that will allow me to do, this is a very roundabout way of doing it, but the reason why I wanted to do that is now if I just sketch a sink, let me just do a random square that looks about right. Okay, so here's my square. Now what I want to do is I want to grab all these lines and essentially center them. So I'm going to be showing you a lot of new things with one move. So if you can tell, if I click, you can probably hear it, it only grabs one line at a time, which is kind of annoying. So what I want you to do is hover over one line, and it's really subtle, but you can see it turning a darker blue instead of black. So don't click on it, hover on it, hit tab, and then click, and it gets the whole chain. Okay, I'm going to hit escape and do that one more time. So this is kind of like a cheer. Hover, tab, click. That's how you can get a whole segment of things. I'm going to do it one more time just because it's so fun. I'm going to hover over here this time. I'm like a total stalker. So hover, tab, and then click. And what this does, once I get everything selected, this is where I am going kind of back to AutoCAD. So if you haven't taken AutoCAD, this will be totally new for you. But there is a move command in CAD. And in Revit, it's MV. It's right here. So if you just type in MV or touch this icon, there's a couple things you need to do before you move it. The first thing it wants you to do, look, it's so nice. It's telling me on the screen. Click to enter move start point. So what that means is where do you want to move it from? So you can see it starts highlighting all of these different places to grab the object from. And these little triangles mean that it is the midpoint. So I was pretty close to drawing this on the actual center point of my reference plane because that's what I'm trying to do. This is really weird. I'm going to pull it out to the side, right? So you can see how close I was, There's a little tiny preview of it, but what I want to do is get it right on that midpoint, which is about right here. Okay, so there's the midpoint of my sink. And again, I didn't measure this out. I just kind of eyeballed it. So if there's a size of sink that you want to put in, please do. And if you want to get so fancy and put in like the actual faucet and things like that, absolutely. For me, this space planning is good enough. But again, this is the sad part about drafting lines. It absolutely doesn't exist here. So what we need to do is show a little bit more information. If we have a sink in the base cabinet here in the main level, we should also show it in the interior elevation. It looks incomplete. Now, one thing that you might notice, let me do another window tile for us, is my reference planes also appear in this view as well. So these reference planes are also BIM objects, which is pretty awesome. So you can see where the center point is, and you can also see the end point of my sink. Now I can just do detail lines again. So for example, if I wanted to draw the top of my sink, I could just do a detail line kind of randomly somewhere like this. And then I can do I can measure to the top. And if I'm being ADA compliant, I can put it at 3 feet, right? Or I could grab that line and I can pull it down to something like 32 inches, which might be a more standard residential height to put your countertop. And that just gets me started. So once I have this height here, I can go ahead and delete that. I'd also need another toe kick. So again, I'm just going to randomly place it and then use my dimensions to move this. I mentioned earlier that the standard toe kick is 4 inches, right? You could also decide that you want to be a total modernist with this project. A lot of these like floating cabinets are really popular that are open on the bottom and people fold their towels into it. You might want to do something like that. So if that's the case, maybe you bump this up to, at least a foot, maybe even, I don't want to get too small up here. I don't want to make like my storage suffer, but maybe we'll just keep it at 1 foot above. And then this is like our storage space here. So lots of different options here. And again, I can do DL and just finish this part here. But I also want to draw the top of my counter. So with the top of the counter, one thing that you can also do, again, I'm throwing more kind of drafting commands at you, is you can do something called an offset. And I'm going to show you how that works. So if you know that your countertop is 1 inch down from here, instead of moving it or copying it or even redrawing it 1 inch down, you can use offset. And the way that offset works, the shortcut is OF, and you put in OF, and then up here, you define how far to offset it. So right now it's a 1 foot offset. So you can see hopefully that if I'm just hovering, it shows me a preview of where it's going to copy that line. So an offset is essentially a copy at a certain distance away, right? So I want to take this countertop and copy it 1 inch down. So if that's the case, I'm going to change this to 1 inch. Copy is on, and I don't want to go up, so make sure that it's downward. I don't want to make that countertop higher and make it not ADA accessible. And then I get my countertop. So again, the shortcut for that, I'm going to do that one more time. So it's OF, and then up here, make sure you set your distance and that copy is on. And then you just come and hover over the line. And then as soon as you see it in the right direction, you can keep offsetting. These lines are free. But I'm going to undo those. You really need to do it once. And then when you're done, go ahead and hit enter to be done. So we've got this really long cabinet here. And I don't know exactly how I want it divided. I don't know if I want it to be divided into 2 or 3. So this is one thing that's kind of nice. If I wanted to, I can use the equal command. Like I can dimension it and do equal and divide it into 3 parts and 4 parts and see what looks right. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to throw one more shortcut at you. So if you select something and you want to copy it, the shortcut is CO. So CO. And then just like the move command, before it copies it, you have to tell it where you want to grab it from. And to me, that's pretty important. So I'm going to say grab it from here. And you can see that that's kind of where it's holding it, right? Now that was kind of a bust because it just made one copy and it ended. So when you start copy, make sure up here, turn on multiple. I should have mentioned this earlier when we first started, but this might be one of the times in class where it might help to know AutoCAD. Just because these commands I'm doing right now, I'm just clicking and dragging because I don't want these to be above. When I'm doing these commands, the people who have already taken CAD, it might be intuitive to them because they exist in CAD. So if you haven't taken CAD, it might take a little bit more practice to get used to these things. But I'm not getting too hung up on them just because you don't draft that much in Revit. So again, you only need to know it enough for this assignment, maybe 1 or 2 other places, but the majority of the stuff that we're doing is BIM modeling. So don't sweat it if you need to watch this a few times until it becomes comfortable. After you've taken CAD, it'll make more sense. And so coming back to where I started, I have these 4 random segments, but I can fix them easily by doing DI. I'm going to start here. I'm going to measure all these babies out. Okay, I'm going to place this up here. Oops, didn't like what I measured. Okay, I got them placed. There's my equal button. And I'm not going to do it yet because sometimes you forget to do it. So I'm going to show you where to find it after. If you click on your dimension string, it pulls it back up. Okay, so again, if you lost your equal sign, click on the dimension string, find your equal, and there's your cabinets, if you want them to be equal. Let's see what size they are. They're about 1 foot. That's not too bad. That's a little, on the slim side, but that's really not bad for a bathroom. If you're curious, so I just deleted that and it's sad. It's like, wait, you told me to be equal, but now the dimension is gone. I'm going to say unconstrained. What I'm going to do now is delete one of those. Let's see what it looks like with 3. And this is really the part where you get to be in the designer seat. What looks right to you. So in your assignment, and I quickly hit delete on those. I hit unconstrained. Let's see what those numbers actually were. Maybe I didn't want to delete it quite that fast. So we've got about 15 inches there, almost 16 inches. So really, I think either one works. You can decide what looks best. Now this aesthetic here that I've got going on, super modern, there's like no detail to it. It's very simple. It's floating there. There are no legs, but this is where you can come in and do all of that detail. When I use the offset, one other thing that you can use the offset for is to create maybe some dimension and depth to your cabinets. So for example, if you turn on offset, if you wanted to do kind of like maybe like a shaker style cabinet, maybe offset this like 3 inches. And let me go to, oh, wait, no, I lied. I can't do it on these. You could do it. This would take forever though, because you'd have to clean up your corners. See why this is like, ooh, it didn't quite work out. Let me show you one other way of doing that. I like shortcuts, so let me undo that. You can still use offset, but we're actually going to use it directly in the detail line. So DL, right? We're going back on the DL. We select rectangle, and then hidden in here, we've also got an offset. So if I make this 3 inches, here's what happens. When I come and hover over this corner to start drawing a rectangle, you can see that it's drawing it 3 inches to the outside. Now, what do we do if it draws it to the wrong side? We hit spacebar and we pull it into the inside. Right? So there's a nice little offset for us. So this, using the offset, I think will help you get a lot of details that you would be getting maybe in CAD that you like, or just adding more details to make it look a little less stark. Like I said, I like the modern, so it's fine. And you might even turn some of these into drawers. Who knows? You might not want 3 cabinets there. So if I, delete these, I can do a detail line again. And I can make like 3 drawers or something. Okay, so after I do those, I just hit escape. Maybe you want them equal. Maybe you want like a larger bottom drawer. Some people do that too. Let's make them equal. Delete again so you can actually see the work. Unconstrain. So this is where you get to come in and have some of that fun and spec it out. But remember, this will not exist in any other view. You won't see it in the floor plan. You won't see it if you throw in a 3D camera. But it does give you some detail. The last thing I'm going to do while I'm in here is I can also draw a mirror. So if I do DL again, I can grab a circle. And I can, again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. But there's that. And then if I use offset while I'm in here, I can do one of those really thin profile frames. Let's see, do I have to start in the center? Forgive me on this, I don't remember quite how to start it. There we go. So if I just go to the edge, it offsets at 1 inch. I started it at the center of that circle, and then getting to the edge get me the 1 inch offset. Just make sure it doesn't bump into whatever faucet you want to put there. But you can do a circular mirror with the frame. You can also easily do a rectangular mirror with the frame using the rectangular offset as well. Just some simple drafting techniques for you to take a look at. So for this particular bathroom in the exercise, go ahead and give me a BIM model, and sorry, a mix of BIM modeling as well as drafting methods. And then for your modern 2-bedroom house, you can decide if you want to do drafting methods or if you want to do all of it BIM. I wouldn't suggest doing all of it drafting just because drawing the tub and the toilet will not be fun. But I want you to try some of these drafting methods. So again, hopefully you guys know, remember, go at your own pace. So if you need to like pause and rewind, review some stuff, especially with the new commands that I showed you, we had copy. We also had offset. We've done dimensioning before. Move was new. And I think that was it as far as the drafting goes. And then again, just detail lines in general. But hopefully that's enough to get you guys sketching comfortably inside Revit. And then in the future, once we start working on your midterm, I will be giving you guys even bigger volumes of BIM models for you to pull in so you can do hopefully some more custom work. But that covers it as far as your drafting methods go. Use it wherever you feel comfortable, wherever you think you need it. But again, hopefully that should be enough to get you started.